Sherman, The Oakley Show, Global News Radio, 640 Toronto. Want to talk a little bit about the holidays, the upcoming holidays. So many people putting a lot of thought into how they're going to try to assemble, whether they're going to do it virtually, whether you're going to have very curtailed Christmas dinners. We did some stuff on this yesterday where we looked at a survey that said many people, are planning on doing things that maybe they shouldn't be doing, but that's not what the subject is. The subject for today is what happens when you have a split family. What happens when you've got separated parents, divorced parents, and you've got custody with one or custody with the other, or even joint custody where the time that you want with your children is not available to you. Those kinds of things come into play at holiday time. And you know what? This is the season where everybody, regardless of what the family situation is, says, wow, I've got time. The kids are not in school, and we can get together and we can plan a dinner, we can do some things. Well, there are fewer things for you to do in terms of taking the kids out for supper, in terms of getting them into your house if they don't ordinarily live with you. A lot of things that come into play that wouldn't in ordinary times. Isn't everything like that? Well, Alyssa Bach is a lawyer. She's an associate lawyer, actually, with Shulman Partners LLP, and she and her firm have given this some thought. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Alyssa, thanks for joining us. So co-parenting is the biggest element that you seem to be focusing on with regard to how COVID comes into play in the holiday season. You've got, let's say, typical situation, a couple of kids, they live with mom, dad gets them on the weekend or maybe every second weekend. Now you've got holidays, so you've got a couple of weeks that are essentially open, and there's generally a negotiation or there's some kind of a plan that exists in paperwork that says kids go here on these days, they go there on those days, but you've got two houses and you've got kids that are traveling between two houses, and those houses may have once upon a time been one house and one family, but now they're split, and so it kind of breaches the spirit and endangers, potentially, you could say, both households by having this happen. What do you do?
Yeah, on a general level, it's pretty common that we're seeing tension around holiday schedules, even outside of the pandemic. We're dealing with, like you said, parents who are used to having this special time with their children, and then at separation, you're stuck divvying up time. And when we add in this pandemic, it's adding that additional layer of complexity, because now we're not only seeing disagreements about where the kids are spending Christmas and New Year's or whatever religious holidays they're celebrating or just spending the time together, but also whether it's safe during these transitions. Now, with a lot of parents throughout the pandemic, we're now quite a few months into it, they've already determined how they're spending their regular scheduling, right? Normally, it's been encouraged that regular schedules are still followed. But coming into the holidays, we're adding this added complexity that normally parents want to be spending time with extended family as well, for example. And so they need to be having these conversations with each other, assessing what the government protocols are in their areas, following that as much as they can, and being open about, say, for example, one parent really wants to see their sibling. That's somebody that's part of their social bubble. But then the other parent is expressing concern because they have a family member who is higher risk that's living in their household. And so this is where we're seeing a lot of these complications with the holiday time. It's what are the plans of the parents, making sure that they're on the same page as far as safety protocols, and that we're not adding any additional exposure to either family unit because of the holiday season.
And of course, the dirty little secret that isn't so secret is that not every ex-spouse gets along with his or her ex-spouse. And some parents, in addition, just say, I'm not going to follow public health guidelines. You're putting yourself in the crosshairs if you do that, aren't you?
Yes, it's something that the courts have been pretty adamant throughout the pandemic that the government regulations are to be followed. And what happens in family disputes is that when parents aren't agreeing, they all of a sudden feel, well, maybe I'll go into the court and have this decided by a judge. Discouraged on many points. Right now, our courts are fairly overwhelmed. It's costly, it can be timely, and you're stuck with the decision that you may not like, because at the end of the day, the courts are also relying on these government regulations. So when it comes down to it, if you're sitting there and saying, well, I don't want to follow the regulations, but I still want this time, go before a judge and say, no, I'm not following these, it could backfire. So you want to be following the regulations. You want to be having open and frank conversations with your partner, even if you don't get along, trying to look at it in like the spirit of the holiday, compromise, like have these discussions and try to negotiate. Like, what is the root issue? What are the concerns? Is there a middle ground that can be found for having this time work for both of you, right? It's something that, in addition to the parents being used to this, the kids want that time too. And so you want to make sure that they're staying the focus.
I've got to say, Alyssa, this sounds so COVID. It's in the sense that we haven't got enough trouble between former spouses. Now we need this. And government proclamations or edicts about who may see whom, and everybody trying hard to follow them because nobody really wants that court action. So you take that and then pile on this. Social media, which contributes to everything, and not always in a good way. People post and they say things about the restrictions and lockdowns and so forth. And the next thing you know, an angry ex-spouse is grabbing what you put online and saying, look what you said about this. You're not going to respect it. I'm not letting you have the kids. And a fight breaks out.
Yeah, people are definitely getting frustrated the longer the pandemic goes on. And so all we can say on that is that when it comes to social media and posting your views, really think about it before you put it out there. There are government restrictions that are in place for a reason. And like I said, the courts are relying on those government restrictions. So whether you agree with them or not, if you're then posting all over social media that you're blatantly disregarding them, for example, it's not going to look favorable if things do end up in court, right? It's just more ammo for conflict.
Sure. I've got this little idea. Tell me if I'm off base. If I were in this position, I'm a spouse, I want to see my kids, my spouse has custody of the kids, we have to negotiate this whole thing. I think I would say, provided we were of good faith, and I'd like to think that most people are of good faith, at least after a time, that you'd come to a conclusion like, I want to be sure that your house is safe. I will undertake to absolutely isolate for the next 2 weeks if you will do the same thing, and then we'll both go get tested, and we'll submit the results of the test to each other. Is that something that could work?
It could, and what's going to work for each family could be different. Some parents are going to have the ability to fully isolate. Others, if they're still, for example, having to attend work in person, they may not be able to fully isolate. But figuring out where the causes of concern are. For example, if it's, look, I'm okay with you seeing the kids, but I don't want extended family. Please confirm that it's just going to be you and the kids. Please confirm that you're taking all necessary precautions as far as masks and sanitation and not going out unless necessary in advance of the holidays. Really making sure that you're having that open dialogue and taking as many precautions as possible, knowing that it's already kind of a heightened tension time of year.
Okay, you've put out a little list of 5 points, I know, from Shulman and Company, and